Would the audience please rise for the presenting of the
Hold on. You're jumping the gun a little bit. Why don't you go on the other side if you would for just a second. Okay. All right, let me call this village board meeting to order on Monday, December 3, 2018. I'll introduce you in just a second. Before we have the flag ceremony, and we're very pleased to be joined by Cub Pack number 129 from Southminster Presbyterian Church tonight. I do think it's appropriate to honor and remember a truly great American. That's our 41st President of the United States, George Herbert Walker Bush. Like many of you, I looked up to the greatest generation for inspiration when I was growing up. And I don't think there's any better example of a great lifetime public servant than George Herbert Walker Bush. Started his lifetime of public service to our nation at age 19 as the youngest pilot in the Navy during World War II, and continued his lifetime of public service to our nation in many different appointed and elected capacities, including the director of the CIA, ambassador, and vice president for 2 terms, and then again our 41st president of the United States. So if you would join me in a moment of silence for a truly great American. Thank you. Now, hold on. Let me introduce your names before you do that. Again, this is Pack 129 from Dryden and Juliet Lowe, sponsored by Southminster Presbyterian Church. And we're joined tonight by a big group of young men: Logan Bagley, John Duda, Matthew Hervis, Garrett Husky, Sean Kerr, Daniel Kozinski, Kai Lair, Nico Lair, Zeke Miller, Dylan Mustafik, Hunter Pearsall, Lucas Papirski, Dylan Piccioni, Gianni Scaletta, David Tita, Mason Wickline, and Noah Wickline. And they're led by their leaders, David Lair, Brett Piccioni, and Chris Wickline. All right, now, finally, the floor is yours.
Would the audience please rise for the presenting of the flags? Color guard attention. Color guard forward march. Color guard halt. Color guard present the flags. Color guard salute. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
2. Color guard return to ranks. Color guard about face. Forward march. Dismiss. Audience may be seated.
Let's give them a round of applause. Nice job, gentlemen. And so we would move on then in the agenda to a roll call. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Rosenberg, Trustee Scaletta, Here.
Trustee Sidor,
Here.
Trustee Glasgow,
Here.
Trustee Tinaglia,
Here.
Trustee Baldino,
Here.
Trustee Blackwood,
Here.
Trustee LaBedz,
Here.
President Hayes.
Here. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes, and we do have two sets to approve tonight. First, from the committee of the whole meeting from November 19, 2018. Are there any changes or passes?
Pass.
Move approval.
Second.
Passed by Trustee Blackwood, and a motion to approve by Trustee Glasgow, seconded by Trustee Scaletta. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And next, the minutes from the village board meeting from that same evening. Any changes or passes?
Pass.
Move approval. Second.
All right, passed by Trustee Blackwood, and a motion to approve by Trustee Scaletta, seconded by Trustee LaBedz. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we move on to the approval of the warrant register dated November 30, 2018. And in Trustee Rosenberg's absence, is there a volunteer? Trustee Glasgow.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make an approval for the warrant register with the check date of 11/30/2018 in the amount of $2,038,471.22.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Glasgow, seconded by Trustee Scaletta. Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee Glasgow,
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta,
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood,
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia,
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz,
Yes.
Trustee Sidor,
Yes.
Trustee Baldino,
Yes.
President Hayes.
Yes. Well, next we move on to recognitions and presentations. And as we do annually, we recognize our retiring boards and commission members. We do have almost 20 appointed boards and commissions that serve as recommending bodies to this elected board of trustees. And so we very much appreciate all of their hard work. They're very much a part of our decision-making process and policy-making process, and we really appreciate all that they do to enhance the quality of life in Arlington Heights. Let me just ask, are there any retiring members of the boards and commissions here to be recognized? I don't see anybody. And so let me just, if I could, read the names and the service of these individuals, and we'll make sure that we get their certificates to them. Frank Appleby served 3 years on the Arlington Economic Alliance. Scott Delaney served 5 years on the Arts Commission. Claudia Glasgow served 2 years on the Youth Commission.
She has a legitimate reason. If she's not studying tonight for exams, she's going to be in trouble.
And I know we thank Trustee Glasgow for giving all three of his kids to be members of one of our boards or commissions, and they did just great service to our community, and I know they'll be very valuable to hopefully Arlington Heights after they get out of their schooling, but whatever community they end up in. So we thank both Trustee Glasgow and his wife Denise for their kids and all that they've done for our community.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Lisa Henderson served 4 years on our Arlington Economic Alliance. Grace Coe served 4 years on our Youth Commission. Andrea Johnson served 1 year on our Housing Commission. Scott Mahan served 1 year on our Youth Commission. Derek Prusner served 4 years on our Youth Commission. John Schroeder served 1 year on our Arts Commission. Joe Skibby served 2 years on our Special Events Commission. And Peter Zabo served 5 years on our Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, including a number of years as chairman of that body. And so again, we thank all of those individuals for their hard work and dedication to our community. We do have a few vacancies, not a whole lot, so if there are any residents who are interested in serving on one of these boards and commissions, please contact me or any member of the board or anyone on our village staff and submit a resume and a letter of interest, and we'd be certainly happy to put you in a spot that will help us and serve the village. So again, thanks to all of our residents for all of their dedicated service to the community. Under recognitions as well, I would like to just take a moment to recognize all those involved in the very challenging early snowstorm that we had last week. This was a very unusual and challenging storm, as we've all experienced, and so we thank everyone involved in the effort in helping us get through that, and not just our village staff, but all of our residents as well. I know many on the board here were directly impacted as well, from power outages to street closures to all kinds of inconveniences and some serious situations. We very much appreciate everyone's cooperation and patience in helping us as a village get through this. It was a very unusual storm, and just some facts that I can relate in terms of the unusual nature of this storm and all the different departments in the village that helped in one way or another, that really went the extra mile to make sure that our residents had the support that they needed. The Public Works Department had 52 snow plows out during the storm event, with drivers working continuous 16-hour shifts. Many of those same employees who plowed the snow for extended periods of time then shifted to cutting down trees to clear our streets and remove hazards. At least one water main break occurred during the event. The Public Works administrative team fielded 662 phone calls on Monday and Tuesday alone. Village Hall employees, most notably the Finance Department front desk, also fielded hundreds of storm-related calls during this time period. The Fire Department responded to 84 down power lines. There were 7 auto accidents and 35 ambulance responses, and a confirmed cardiac arrest save as a result of trying to shovel the very difficult and heavy and wet snow. The Police Department responded to 130 storm-related calls, 23 storm-related traffic accidents, and served as the village's 24-hour switchboard, getting other departments where they needed to go after 5 o'clock p.m. The Health and Human Services Department coordinated our assistance to residents in need. And I'd especially like to thank our village manager, Randy Recklaus, our assistant village manager, Diana McCula, the manager's office team, and all of the individuals in our village staff for all of the great leadership that they showed during this very trying time. Mr. Recklaus, did you have any comments to add? I know Mr. Recklaus was very involved in a number of different ways in our efforts in fighting this storm, and we really appreciate your efforts, Randy.
Oh, thank you. You know, as you mentioned, it was very much a team effort. I was very pleased with how our employees stepped up and rose to the occasion. The other thing I was going to say is, you know, it really displayed the best of our community. We had numerous incidences with neighbors helping neighbors with the numerous days that our outages were going on. We had a number of situations where neighbors were staying at other neighbors' houses. And so you really saw the city of good neighbors at its finest in this event.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Trustee Sidor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add that, you know, in our intergovernmental cooperation, that the library served as a warming shelter, or just as a shelter itself for those without power and looking for something to do, as well as our senior center as well. So we had all hands on deck, and it was the best we could do, and we did well. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, seeing no other comments, then we'll move on. No other recognitions and presentations. We'll move on then to the public hearing for the proposed 2019 budget. I do need to entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Glasgow, seconded by Trustee Sidor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the public hearing is open, and I would like to turn it over to Mr. Recklaus just for some background comments in terms of how we arrived at this evening in the process.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight represents the final step in a long process to approve a budget and assign resources for our 2019 fiscal year. While state law requires just a formal public hearing prior to the approval of the budget, the village has been publicly discussing and seeking input on this budget for the past several months in a variety of ways. The budget reflects the strategic priorities identified by the village board at the end of 2017 for the period of 2018 and through 19. Village surveyed residents on their capital needs this spring. The items in the survey make their way into our capital improvement plan, or CIP. Over the years, there have been many items first identified in that survey that have made our way into the budget, with the most recent example being this year's improvement of the Davis Street corridor along the railroad tracks. The CIP is just a plan and gets formal funding with the approval of the budget. Over the summer, the village board voted on budget ceilings for expenditures and revenues after some discussion. This fall, staff then developed a budget based on the village board's strategic priorities and within the direction given by the board during the budget ceiling process. The budget was released to the public at the end of October on our website, at the senior center and the library. Staff received comments and questions from the public during that time period. I held a presentation of the budget at the senior center where I fielded questions and answers from several seniors during that period. It was a well-attended luncheon event. The village board also held 2 workshop meetings on November 14th and 15th, at which they and members of the public had the opportunity to ask questions and make comments. We also received a number of emails from residents on the budget. Based on the village board's strategic priorities and the input we've received at various stages of the process, the budget before you represents a continuation of the village's history of fiscally responsible planning and service provision. The total budget plan for 2019 is $176 million. The village's operating costs are increasing by 1.7% over the prior year. However, our capital investments are increasing by 59%, due in large part to 2 large stormwater projects and increases in our road and water main replacement programs planned for the coming year. The budget does also request a 1.7% increase in the joint village and library tax levy. What that would mean is an owner of a $300,000 home will see a $23 increase in their annual property tax bill as a result of this change. Now, we will be beginning our next 2-year planning cycle to update the village's strategic priorities this coming spring. Residents will have more opportunities to provide input on the direction of the village and future operational priorities at that time. And as we always say, the budget is really just the kind of the putting the pieces together based on the direction of the village board, really the determination of the direction we're going to go and what the village's priorities are going to be comes during that 2-year planning process, and that's going to be coming up again this spring. Later this meeting, the board will be voting on the tax levy and the proposed budget, but at this time we would like to open things up for public comment.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ecklouse. I do have 3 blue cards from individuals in the audience that wish to address the board on the budget, and so I will call those individuals forward. And you were just reminded of the 3-minute time limit. The first is Janet Boza. Welcome.
Thank you. I just want to make an observation based on property taxes. I did a little bit of investigation. My neighbor across the street has a 2,570 square foot home. Property valuation is $44,352. Our tax levy here is in my neighborhood is 11.266%, and her property tax bill for 2017 was $13,679. Her home value is about $480. This is compared to a home in Glenview, also in Cook County, which is in New Trier School District, which statistically would be one of the highest districts in the Illinois. Same size home, total property valuation is $53,949, 21.6% higher than my neighbors. Their tax levy is 9.75, and their tax bill was $11,000. So their house is currently on the market for $715,000. That's a 49% higher in value with the same square foot, paying 20% less in property taxes. They have reduced their interior, our property values have gone down significantly, and it's difficult for anyone to move in based on the type of property taxes we're paying. I'm close to $18,000 and a little teeny piece of land. When my neighbor had a reduced valuation of 22.6%, yet the tax dollars have gone up in 9 years, 39%. If I had gotten a raise of 39% in 9 years, wouldn't be complaining about my property taxes. So I just wanted to make comments as to fiscal responsibility working within our budget. why we have a higher tax levy than another neighborhood with, again, schools that statistically would be higher on the list than what we are here in our neighborhood, and it's a concern.
Let me, if I could just, and I'm probably not the expert to talk about it, but perhaps I could call on Tom Keeney, our finance director. I think you're talking about assessment.
Correct.
And so I think that's an issue. There's a difference between assessment and levy. So does someone in the staff want to address that? That's more of an expert than me.
Was it a mill rate, a tax levy? I'm not sure I'm using the correct verbiage.
Oh, it's all right. Why don't you take a first shot, Tom?
Well, you threw out a whole lot of information right there. It's really difficult to comment specifically on that, but if you look at the village's overall tax levy, about 65% of that is from school districts. So to do an analysis of some of the things you're saying, we'd really have to look at, you mentioned Glenview and your neighbors. Your neighbor might be in a different school district than you are.
No, it's in Terramere, 214 and 21.
We're right across the street.
Yes.
And we had different rates.
No. The rates were different from the Glenview comparatively. Our rates are 11.266%, and the Glenview rates were 9.75%.
Right, yeah. So we'd really have to take a hard look at those specific rates, what makes them up, the school district budgets. There's so much that goes into coming up with that. And it's all based on Cook County and how they come up with the valuations and then how much is asked for from each of the taxing districts.
And you guys have any input with any of that? No?
If I could too, I mean, one of the challenges, and this is the way property taxes are done is very complex.
Yes.
And the village is only responsible for about 12% of your property tax bill. And so, and while, people, they want to know who to talk to, unfortunately, that's the only piece of this that we control, is that 12%. And I think we often point out the statistic that we've heard before is that many people are paying more to the cable company than they are to the village itself in property taxes. Now, your overall property tax bill is much higher than that, and we recognize that, but unfortunately, we can't control it. The other thing beyond what Mr. Keeney was referencing that can impact an individual property taxpayer's bill is, in that district, what kind of commercial property is in there versus residential, sharing that individual tax burden. But it is difficult, and we do try very hard to keep our property taxes as low as we possibly can, as well as our other taxes and fees. But there is a lot of pressure, and that's not lost on us for sure.
It's a challenge because I know many people leaving Arlington Heights.
I just want to add one more thing as well, just to sort of clarify one of the things that Mr. Keeney said, which is that the county is solely responsible for the assessed valuations of every piece of property. They don't ask the local communities for any input. They make that decision. And that obviously, that assessed value impacts what your taxes are.
Right.
So that's all. I understand Glenview's in the same county, but those are all pieces of what becomes the
And I
deposit.
guess my comment would just be that based on what you know about all this and your ability to stay within budget without having increases is really all we can ask from you guys, is to keep yourself within a budget and not continue to ask for increases because we're getting killed with property taxes.
And you are correct, and we try to do that as much as possible. This is a very slight increase, and I think we do the best we can to keep all of our property taxes, we're all property taxpayers up here as well, as low as possible, but at the same time maintaining the high level of services that our community has come to expect. So it's a real balancing approach that we have to take each year, but I can assure you that there's really no fluff in this budget, and there hasn't been for the past 10 years or so. When the economy took a turn for the worst 10 years ago, we were very adamant about reducing our expenses, and I think we did that. We are still well below our previous numbers in terms of our village staffing, and so we've not rehired those individuals that we reduced during that economic downturn, and so we are trying to be fiscally prudent as much as we can. So we hear you.
Yeah.
And we're trying to do the best we can with what we have to deal with.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Next is Keith Mowens.
Good evening, all. President Hayes, thank you. You know, it was 351 days from right now that we stood at this public hearing, just minutes before the unanimous rubber stamp approval of the 2019 budget and tax levy increase. And we said that time, you know, there's absolutely nothing that can be said at this point from anyone in this 3-minute time frame that could possibly affect any change to that rubber stamp from the board. That's going to be coming up very soon. I think it's probably about 4 minutes after the public hearing is over. In fact, it's already over with. You've already printed the ordinances passed and approved this third day of December 18th. Village president, not village mayor, village president, I think it said. This public hearing tonight is for one reason only, and that's to satisfy a state statute requirement to hold at least one public hearing on the tentative annual budget. In other words, this is all for show right now. Not to get any meaningful input from the public, but we have to satisfy that statute, I guess. We asked you last year to have a public hearing in June when the budget process was just beginning. This would get more meaningful input early on and have 2 more public hearings after that. That did not happen. We asked you to include citizens to be heard on all committee of the whole agendas, especially those that pertain to the budget. It's not up to President Hayes to decide if the public should be heard at these public hearings. It should be formally on the agenda, as we asked last year. For example, the board had 24 committee of the whole meetings this year so far, and President Hayes has asked for comment at 12 of them. That's a 50% score. Where I come from, it's not a passing grade. 2 times this year, President Hayes has refused to meet with a group of Arlington Heights residents to discuss these issues and other issues that we consider important. Once again, it's not up to the president to decide what issues that we should talk about. If it's important to the residents, then it should be important to the president who represents those residents. So yeah, I mean, I think we have to understand again that the board, the staff work for the residents. It's not the other way around. That you have to accommodate what they want to talk about. But I will say, listening to Mr. Recklaus, maybe it's the teacher in me still, but I do always look for positive ground to build on. This year, our village manager said that he had a budget seminar at the senior center, and I think that's great. That's awesome. That was better than last year, except you need to have about 4 or 5 more of those and broadly advertise them during the budget process. The budget was posted to the website for comment. Supposedly this year, a few residents actually found it and commented. I think that's great as well. More marketing, more advertising during the budget process. You have to get the public involved and make an effort early on in the process. And I think then we wouldn't be standing here in this public hearing just a few minutes before it's going to be approved anyway. And also, and I mentioned this before too, President Hayes, you did ask for comments at the Budget Committee of the Whole meetings this year, and that was a big help. That's great. But as we said then, to ensure that those comments are always asked going forward, public comment should be formally on all Committee of the Whole agendas. So our goals for next year at this time, hopefully, when we come back here, all citizens to be heard, formally on all Committee of the Whole agendas, more and sooner formal public hearings in the budget process, 1 in the beginning, 1 in the middle, 1 in the end, and the president schedule a face-to-face meeting with the residents to discuss these issues that the residents feel important about. I look forward to working with you on this, and I would ask tonight if I could get a commitment from the board to meet those 3 requests. Thank you.
No, Mr. Mowens, I've explained to you why I will not meet with you on procedural issues such as Robert's Rules of Order. My position is clear on that. My position is also clear on citizens to be heard. It's very clear that I've invited public comment at each and every meeting, regardless of the nature of it, whether it was a formal board meeting or a committee of the whole meeting. That's very clear, that I've never once in my time as mayor refused to entertain public comment, whether it was formally on the agenda or not. So I strongly disagree with your assertion that I do not entertain public comment at public meetings. And the other comment that I'll make is I'll just strongly disagree with your characterization of this process as being a rubber stamp of the budget. We've certainly had many, many meetings. This budget, as Mr. Recklaus just explained, has taken months to formulate, both with direction and guidance from this board, as well as input from our residents in a number of different ways and manners. And so I would just strongly disagree with your characterization of it as a rubber stamp. We've actively sought and received input from those residents that wanted to provide input. We can't force people to come to these budget hearings. And historically, we have had a lot of empty seats at our budget hearings. And what that says, I'm not sure. Maybe the community is satisfied with the job that their elected representatives are doing, the majority of the residents. I can't speak to that. But I know that these meetings are publicized, they're open to the public, and we invite public comment at any and all meeting. So thank you, Mr.
I just want to
Mullins.
ask one other thing. I think you can do a lot more to engage the public early. And I think if you engage the public early, then they'll feel that they're a part of the process. And I don't believe the village does that. And I also want to make clear that you are refusing to meet with us for the third time. I just want to make sure that's clear.
And let me make it clear that the request is to discuss Robert's Rules of Order and other procedural
The request,
matters.
President Hayes, is to talk about issues that residents are interested in. And we've asked to talk about residents. And quite frankly, you don't have the freedom to really say what residents want to talk about. You work for us, President Hayes. I don't know if you quite understand that sometimes. You need to understand, as does the staff, they work for residents, not the other way around.
Thank you, Mr. Mullins.
Okay, thank you.
Next is Bill Davis.
Happy holidays, everybody.
You too. Thanks for coming.
First of all, I'd like to say to everybody, Mayor Hayes, the trustees, the managers, and everybody that works here, Arlington Heights is a great place to live. And what you guys do every day, we appreciate. Really appreciate that. Now, I come here, though, not bearing gifts, but I have some concerns. I also, like some of the people in the behind me here, are from the Terramere Creekside area of Arlington Heights. For those of you who don't know, that is the further northernmost northwest corner of Arlington Heights. It's home to 770 families, almost 2,900 people. We recently formed the Terramere Creekside Civic Association, kind of re-energized it from years and years of nothing going on. Bert Rosenberg lives up there in the Terramere area. He is on the board of the new group. We're doing a lot of civic involvement to get our neighbors involved. One of the reasons we're here. We're talking about parties in the park, safety for our kids, bike paths, all the good things that you deal with every day. Unfortunately, I raised my hand to be the chairman of the Personal Property Tax Group and Committee. And we've been 2 months now studying property taxes. Janet Boza just said it's outrageous. It's more than that. We have been piling through different communities, areas within Arlington Heights. We've been looking at not only our tax rates, the Arlington Heights tax rates, zip code 0405, Palatine, Barrington, etc. What we have found is in our area, we have an overlay of taxing groups, entities, that are creating one of the highest personal property taxes in the area. Guys, this is crushing us. And I know that Arlington Heights budget is only 11%, 10.8, I guess, and the library is only 5, and the park district is only 5. That's 20%. And we know that 71% in our area, 71% goes to public schooling. District 21, 214, Harper. These tax rates are crushing our resale value. And we're residents of Arlington Heights. There's 770 residents up there in that corner of Arlington Heights. We had 5 realtors tell us, it's tough to sell homes in your area because of your personal property taxes. That's tough to hear. And I looked for a magical formula. The guys have been crushing numbers. We can't find a magic formula. We find it's a whole bunch of entities that are making this perfect storm for us. But when you go to sell a home up in the Terramere Creekside area, you either have to sell it for about $2,000 to $3,000 less than a comparable home in your area, right here, south of here, 6005. Or you just have to stay and pay. It's tough. So we need your help. We're here to ask for your help, for whatever you can do to guide us on a right path to find ways of reducing that cost. Now, we looked at your budget. Thank you for putting it online. It's a masterpiece. 428 pages, something like that. I didn't look at all of them. I looked at a few key parts of this, and we had people that were responsible for going through it. 1.7% increase, that's great in anybody's book. But it's too much for us up in the Terramere area, in the Creekside area. 1.7%, that's a lot. That's going to drive that 11.25% local tax up to almost 13. We computed it a little while ago, about 12.5, 13. That's raising our prices again. What do we want? We'd like your help. We'd like you to look at 3 areas. Number 1, there's a lot of vacant retail and businesses in the area. We understand their tax rate is 2.5 times the rate of a residential property. But when they're vacant, it's virtually nothing. Where I'm at, Dundee Road, right down Dundee Road, there's vacant auto dealership after auto dealership. I just saw that Palatine made a big deal with one of our dealerships, taking 3 of the dealerships over there. We're asking you to do whatever you can to fill those vacancies and decrease our tax burden, because that'll help us. That'll reduce our taxes from where we live, and correspondingly, that'll increase our retail values to where they should be. What else would we like you to do? One line item on your budget that caught my eye, and I didn't understand it for a long time. There's $30 million in a fund. It looked to me like it's like a checkbook, kind of to cover problems if they come up. There's a footnote that says that should be 25% of your operating budget. That would be 18,000, or 18 million, excuse me, a few zeros. You're reserving 30 million, $12 million more. Some of the neighboring cities, villages, have dipped into some of those funds to take that increase off the books. Number 1, we're asking you to fill those vacancies, whatever you have to do to get retailers and businesses in place. Number 2, we're asking you to dip into that $12 million of unneeded reserve. So it isn't a 1.7%. What a beautiful holiday gift. 0% increase for Arlington Heights. Amen, brother. I'm for it, okay? That's number 2. Number 3, Arlington Heights is always there for us. The police are there for us. The fire folks are there for us. 911 is there. Can you be there for us now to help us figure out this quagmire, to find ways of reducing those heavy District 21, District 214 overlays that we have in our area? Can you help us with the Arlington Heights Village taxes? That 10.8 that's going to go to 11.7 or so? Can you help us with the Arlington Heights Library cost impact? I'm not asking for reductions of services. I'm asking us to look at where we can save and continue to do and live in our areas the way we do. Being the highest in Arlington Heights is one thing for personal property taxes, but being highest in the entire area is crazy, and we shouldn't have to bear that. We get good services, we've got good Tarks, we've got Nickel and Knoll up there.
Mr. Davis, I'm going to have to
Your
ask
help.
you to wrap up.
Well, I'll be done in about 10, 20 minutes. No, I respect that. Thank you, you've let me go already. So I heard somebody just ask you for your commitment. I would love, Mayor, Mr. President, the village manager, to work with us to find ways that Terramere and the Creekside area, the Terramere Creekside Civic Association residents aren't under this burden. Can I get that commitment?
Well, Mr. Davis, in response, I can definitely commit that this board will continue to work to keep not only Terramere's property taxes as low as possible, but the property taxes of every resident in this community as low as possible. But, you know, we can't guarantee it because there's so many different things involved. For example, you live in District 21, I live in District 21. You know that the residents in District 21 overwhelmingly approved the referendum in this past election. So, I mean, that's something that the village can't control. That's another governmental body, another taxing body. So it's a complex system, but we hear you. Believe me, we hear you.
Good.
And this board has always been committed to try to keep property taxes as low as possible. You raise another good point about businesses. Our two most important sources of revenue to pay for the things that we put in our budget are property taxes and sales tax revenue. So our business community is very, very important to us, and it's as a result of policies that this board has implemented and directed, and the great leadership of our village staff, and particularly the efforts of our planning department under the leadership of Charles Perkins, that have kept our vacancy rates lower than the vacancy rates in our surrounding communities. So, and that's a fact. So we do see vacant.
I'll check that.
Well, you can. We'll give you the numbers, right, Charles?
Yes, we can provide that.
Okay.
So we do have our share of vacancies. There's no question about that. And, you know, we can only do so much to prevent that. If a family-owned business that's been in operation for 40 years decides to retire and close the business, there's nothing we can do about that. So we do all we can to retain our existing businesses and attract new businesses to keep those vacancy rates as low as possible. But so we appreciate the efforts of our business community to work together with us, but a lot of times it's a private business decision that's just out of our control. But it's very important to us, and we'll continue our efforts to try to keep those vacancy rates as low as possible.
Once again, happy holidays. I've got the job of being the committee chairman for our group up there, so you'll be seeing us more at some of these opportunities to give our input, right?
Yep.
Okay, I never have gotten any opportunity to do that, but I would love to do it. So please remember us, and we've got a great group up there.
All right,
Thank you very
thanks,
much.
Mr. Davis. Trustee Scaletta.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also, have you reached out to the assessor's office in your township, Wheeling Township?
Just there last week, right?
Fantastic, because that's a good place where they might be able to make things clear, because I've had confusion and concern before as well, and that's always a good place to start. And for everyone's information, the dealerships along Dundee that are just east of Old Arlington Heights Road, those are all in Buffalo Grove. So, because everyone thinks that that's Arlington Heights. Just because they call it this of Arlington Heights or that of Arlington Heights, they like our name. And even when they are in town and they move, they still keep our name. Those are all in Buffalo Grove. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that for you.
Thank you very much. We did meet with
Jerry Sadler? Dan Patlack.
the other day. We got a lot of good information. We got a lot of our people filing the bills. That's one of the pieces.
Excellent. Thank you.
Absolutely. Further questions or comments? Trustee Sidor.
Just, Mayor, just if maybe Tom Keeney can clarify the reserve fund, which was mentioned here, just to make sure that the resident understands how that works and why we fund it the way we do.
Sure, there's a 25% minimum reserve, and we just say minimum because we don't want to fall below that. We try to keep more than that because we are sales tax dependent, which really depends on the economy. Sales taxes have leveled off over the past couple of years, and we've also had telecommunications taxes decreasing significantly. Since 2004, they decreased by $2.5 million. So there's a big hole that's caused by some of the decreases there and people using cell phones instead of landlines. And there's a lot of issues that go into the total revenue package for the village.
Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you. One thing I would like to add, and I've said this to other people throughout the community, and that is please, please, please shop in Arlington Heights. If you have a choice to go to a grocery store in Buffalo Grove or Mount Prospect or Arlington Heights, pick the Arlington Heights one. The sales tax revenue that we get from all the stores that are here in town is so, as you know, is so important to us. And also, shop the small businesses here in town. That will help keep them open, keep those doors open. And as I said, I've said that to many people over the years. The internet sales boom makes this very difficult, but whenever possible, please choose to shop in Arlington Heights. Thank you.
Right, further
And
questions?
eat and drink in Arlington
There you
Heights.
go.
Yes.
There you go.
No Buffalo House, just go south.
All right, I have no other blue cards. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to address the board under the public hearing portion of the budget? Seeing none, any further questions or comments from the board? Trustee Glasgow.
I'd just like to ask, Mr. Keeney, how much is the limb pickup for Public Works going to cost because of the storm?
I don't have that.
We don't have an estimate. It's going to depend a little bit on how much of it we have to contract out versus how much of it we have to, we're going to be able to do with overtime and during the days. That's going to depend on how much snowfall we get. I've spoken with the Director of Public Works. We believe we're going to be able to handle it within some existing funding that we have available, but some of that is just going to depend on how long this goes.
But these are items that are not budgeted for, right, Mr. Keeney?
Yeah, it's not budgeted for, and that's another good reason why we have reserves for that, because last time I did talk to Mr. Shirley, he did say that he thinks the overtime budget will be exceeded this year because of snow events as well as the branch pickups.
Okay, thank you.
That's a dip in the reserve.
Trustee
Just to
Scaletta.
kind of clarify the example that I think Trustee Glasgow was going for there is that in 2011, when we had the microburst, was that the year? 2011, the amount, it was over $1 million that the village took out of the reserves to take care of the cleanup of the village, so that it wasn't placed on all the residents. So that's, you know, what we've strictly tried to use the reserve for is emergencies, and when there's a significant change, as we're starting to see with retail sales, is that they've now kind of leveled off. And as somebody who manages commercial properties, I can tell you that when there is a vacancy and the landlord does fight for a reduction in property taxes, it's not almost nothing. I agree that there is a reduction because there is no tenant to pay the real estate taxes, but it's still significant.
Okay, anything further from the board? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
By Trustee Glasgow, seconded by Trustee Sidor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we will then move on in the agenda to citizens to be heard, and we do have one blue card from an individual who wants to address the board on an item not on the agenda, and that's Jed Weiner. Mr. Weiner, did I pronounce your last name correctly? I think I got it.
351 days ago when I last spoke, I told my boys either pronunciation is going to build character.
Okay.
We choose Wiener, but Wiener and Weiner, neither
Okay.
one of them are pretty attractive. Hey, when I was growing up, Wiener was just a hot dog. Now it's even harder for my boys. I learned a lot tonight. Mr. Recklouse, when you were running through the litany of opportunities that I could have availed myself to participate in the budget creation process, it was with chagrin that I said, well, I missed all of those. So I did not know all that the town, our town, I've been here for 24 years, does to solicit public input. So I would encourage all of you to, for 2019 and beyond, all that you're doing to announce it, to do more. However, that might be accomplished in a fiscally responsible way. I'm not talking about advertising during probably poorly watched Chicago Bulls games, but somehow letting the citizenry know about those opportunities. Because I can't complain when I don't participate either. I wasn't planning on talking about the vacant businesses, but I do think it would be a great idea to do more marketing, to find ways to support new businesses coming in. When someone as rich as Herb Cole can get the state of Wisconsin to pay for a nearly $1 billion arena, hopefully that'll be the last one that our society has to pay for. I would hope that the state of Illinois and Cook County and Arlington Heights can do something to enhance businesses here. And it might be just with marketing, spending public funds for marketing, all that is wonderful about Arlington Heights. But the main reason I put in the blue card was to just ask you, and now with your, again, educating me about all the opportunities I could have taken advantage of for public comment, to use what you're currently doing as the foundation and commit to yourselves and to all of us to do even more to solicit public comment. However that can be best accomplished. I think we're in a new political time. I'm 64 years old. I've been politically active since I was about 14. And we're seeing a wave. I won't attach a color to it, but more people are getting involved than ever before. And I think on a local level in Arlington Heights, the more that we can all do to commit to sunshine and openness will be a good thing. So for those of you running for re-election, I would encourage you to think about making that part of your platform, to commit to as open, transparent, and participatory local government as possible. And in return, we as residents should do our part and help you more by giving you our best thinking as well. So thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Mr. Weiner, and that is another thing that I can commit to on behalf of this board as well, so we appreciate your coming tonight.
Thank you.
Right, are there any other members of the audience who wish to address the board on an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on then to old business. There is none, so we move on to the consent agenda. Are there any members of the board who wish to remove an item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, any members of the audience who wish to remove an item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, are there any members of the board who wish to vote no or pass on any item on the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Second.
A motion to approve the items on the consent agenda by Trustee Glasgow, seconded by Trustee LaBedz. Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee Glasgow?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood?
Yes.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. There is no new business, so we'll move on to legal, and we'll take one by one the tax levy and abatement ordinances. And so I'd entertain a volunteer for legal A.
I'd make a motion to abating taxes levied for the year 2018, heretofore levied to pay principal and interest on $2,855,000 general obligation bond series 2010 of the Village of Arlington Heights.
Second.
Point of order.
We've got, let me just announce, we've got a motion by trustee Glasgow, seconded by trustee Sidor. Now, trustee Scaletta.
What was the amount?
2,855,000.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm following along. Sorry, I apologize. I was
Get it
reading.
wrong?
I was reading the description at the top, and I'm like, it's not 2 million. It's 288. Okay, got it. Thank you. I apologize.
No problem.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Keeney.
Just for a point of clarification, the bond issue amount is correct. It's 288,000 for this particular one that's being abated.
Correct. Thank you.
All right, any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Saying none, roll call.
Trustee Glasgow?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. Volunteer for item B. Trustee Scaletta.
I would move now that the village board approve the ordinance abating taxes levied for the year 2018, heretofore levied to pay principal and interest on $9,530,000 worth of general obligation bonds, Series 2018 of the Village of Arlington Heights.
Second.
Motion by trustee Scaletta, seconded by trustee Tinaglia. Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Saying none, roll call.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
Trustee Glasgow?
Yes.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. And item C.
Make a motion adopting a budget and appropriations ordinance and amounts set forth therein for the year commencing January 1st, 2019 and ending December 31st, 2019.
Second.
Motion by trustee Glasgow, seconded by trustee LaBedz. Questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Roll call.
Trustee Glasgow?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. And finally, legal D. Go ahead, trustee Baldino.
I make a motion to pass an ordinance providing for the levy, assessment, and collection of taxes for the year beginning January 1, 2019, and ending December 31st, 2019, for the Village of Arlington Heights.
Second.
Motion by trustee Baldino, second by trustee Sidor. Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
Trustee Blackwood?
Yes.
Trustee Glasgow?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. Move on then to the report of the village manager, Mr. Ecklas.
Nothing further this evening.
Okay. Under petitions and communications, just a couple of things. First, I want to thank the Rotary Club of Arlington Heights for another great job in planning and executing the Santa Run. It was very challenging conditions. I think they had about 1,400 people pre-register for the run, but only 580 brave souls, including myself and trustee Scaletta's wife and son, and perhaps some others, actually ran the race that morning. It was 38 degrees at race time with a steady rain, and so it was some very challenging conditions, but I was very surprised that almost 600 people actually did show up. So we thank everyone who participated, and again, the Rotary Club and all the sponsors for, once again, executing a very worthwhile, in a number of different ways, community event. And then speaking of worthwhile community events, we've got holiday happenings here at Harmony Park this coming Friday night from 4:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And so please join us. I think it's going to be cold, but hopefully no precipitation. And Mr. and Mrs. Claus are going to be there and a number of other special guests. And so we would ask everyone in the community to help us celebrate the holidays at Holiday Happenings at Harmony Park this Friday at 4:30 p.m. Anything further from the board? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
By trustee LaBedz.
Second.
Seconded by trustee Baldino. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks for joining us this evening.